And welcome back. President Trump is threatening to keep the government shutdown going for, quote, months or even years if Congress does not pass funding for the border wall. And as the partial shutdown reaches day number 15 today, with no end in sight, it appears, President Trump now says he has another option on the table.
You don't need congressional approval to build the wall.
No, we can use them. Absolutely. We can call a national emergency because of the security of our country. Absolutely. No, we can do it. I haven't done it. I may do it. I may do it. But we can call a national emergency and build it very quickly. And it's another way of doing it. But if we can do it through a negotiated process, we're giving that a shot.
So is that a threat hanging over the Democrats?
I never threaten anybody. But I am allowed to do that, yeah.
Joining us now, Ippolito Acosta. He's a former Border Patrol agent and a former senior executive with the Department of Homeland Security, and he's the author of Deep in the Shadows, Undercover in the Ruthless World of Human Smuggling. Ippolito, always good to have you on the show with your expertise and understanding of this topic. And very brass tacks, my friend. From what you know that's happening on the border, are we close to the idea of a state of emergency?
Well, I think I'm not so sure that I'm the appropriate one to say that to discuss the national emergency. But I will say one thing: I think that we need to come up with the solutions that we're looking for. And coming back to the issue of the border wall, I want to remind you one thing, Richard. We've had barriers or walls that actually were created before this administration came into place. So it's nothing new. We had over 700 miles that were done during the time that I worked with the U.S. Immigration Service. So I think that's the issue that we need to address. Is the wall effective? Yeah. Do we need more? And I think that's the important thing.
Well, let me ask you that then, because we've heard the different concepts, and let's forget the words for a moment, just on what they are physically. Concrete wall versus steel beams or slats, if you will, that you can see through. You have barbed wire. There's many other versions. What do you believe is the most effective and is needed or not?
Well, I think it's very effective, but let's take the border wall, the concept. Number one, it's just one of the concepts in enforcing immigration law and for our national security. When we already have 700 miles, I think there's certain remote areas that are used by smugglers, that are used by people coming into the country. And if you were to ask field agents out along the border, they would all concur that there's more that's needed. We don't need a wall from San Diego to Brownsville, Texas, but there are areas that are wide open. They're effective, but that's one of the components that's needed. The second component, of course, is technology and border patrol agents out in the field. It's a combination of things that are needed for border security, because I think that we all agree that the way we had it before was not successful. We have 10 to 15 million illegal aliens in the country. So we need to step up on our enforcement, not only at the border, but in interior enforcement. And I think that's one of the things that that's lacking right now in this process, that everybody has forgotten about interior enforcement, because we also have several million people that came into the country with visas that overstayed, and there's nothing that's being done about it. And it's become such a political issue that I don't think that they're addressing it, what's in the best interest of the country, rather than just making it a political fight.
I think the former Chief of Staff John Kelly would agree with your characterization of the complexity of the very idea and the word of immigration. He was saying, to be honest, this is not a wall. The president still says a wall. Oftentimes, frankly, he says barrier or fencing. Now he's tended towards steel slats. He also went to say in the LA Times, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents said, well, we need a physical barrier in certain places. We need technology across the board, and we need more people. The technology and more people across the board quickly here, Ippolito, it sounds like you would agree with that too.
Well, I do agree with it, and we have drones, sensors, air surveillance is important to protect our borders. But let's go back to the barriers. I do want to say that they're very effective in the way that they're used, regardless of what the terms that are used. I think that the important thing is that the agents out on the field would concur with me that more barriers are needed. We need to make sure that we determine where it's at. And I think one of the things that would help the administration to say where they specifically intend to create these barriers, because I know that our agents out in the field know where they're needed. When we have barriers, they can respond quicker. The infrastructure is important so that they can build roads so that we have agents responding out there. And again, I think it's also for the safety of the people that are coming into the country, because smugglers are known to take people to remote locations where there's no barriers out there that would prevent them from getting out there, or that we could respond quickly to it.
You've seen the waves of interest in this very topic from left and right. Now, Ippolito, we're talking about it because of a government shutdown. And there's been, many different shutdowns where immigration has been part of the conversation. How would you put in context this latest debate about border security?
Well, I think the border security, I think, has been given the appropriate attention. I think we also need to realize that the reason we're in this situation, because for decades we haven't had interior enforcement. Millions of people have come into the country illegally, and now they're bringing in those that they left behind. The catch and release policy for decades that we had gave a very negative outcome for our country, because we released people by the thousands at the Mexico-U.S. border. They never appeared for hearings, and ultimately what we have now in the country is 10 to 15 million people inside the United States living in the shadows. I think, we're making the immigration issue the border wall, but it's a lot more complex. There's different components, and I think that's what our leaders need to address.
Ippolito Acosta, thank you so much.